Dukat. This is actually a character that has been analyzed a lot over the years, but I think this is one instance finally where a German YouTuber will come in handy, because even though a lot of the Cardassian occupation of Beja is modeled on the Japanese imperial occupation of continental East Asia, a lot of it is also based on Nazi Germany in World War II, obviously. And Dukat is a particular character that is based on true stories that actually did happen in Germany after World War II. And to imagine the kind of character Dukat was, you have to think Germany, Nazi Germany, had concentration camps, had extermination camps, but they weren't all equal. Some were more brutal and more deadly than others. So basically, disclaimer here, I'm going to make up numbers. I'm just going to use random numbers for the sake of illustration, just to drive the point home, but it doesn't change that these are actually really real things. I'm just going to use general numbers to make it easier to understand. Imagine you have 4 concentration camps killing Jews. One concentration camp killed 2 million, one concentration camp killed 1.5 million, one concentration camp killed 1 million, one concentration camp killed 500,000. Those are just random numbers. They don't correspond to a real thing, but they're to illustrate a point, and the actual numbers aren't actually that far from the real thing, unfortunately. And the idea behind Dukat is that he was the leader of the concentration camp that killed 500,000, and then after a war, he's the one who would say, my concentration camp, it was by far the least deadly. Look at the other concentration camps. They killed 2 or 4 times as much. You Jewish people, you should be thanking me. I was the most merciful, the least deadly. I only killed 500,000 of you. You should be thanking me for that. You should fall on your knees and say, Dukat, you were such a great man for only killing 500,000 of us in a concentration camp. And that's actually a real thing that occurred in post-war Germany. That's based on real stories, that there were people in leadership positions from concentration camps that were less extreme than Auschwitz, for example, who were saying, well, my camp wasn't as bad as Auschwitz, and you should thank me for that. And people were like, you are running a fucking concentration camp. Who the fuck should thank you for that? Are you insane? But in their minds it was like, because they weren't as extreme as Auschwitz, people should be thanking them for not being as extreme. When everyone who is sane was thinking you were still running a camp that was killing hundreds of thousands. Are you crazy? But it was a real true occurrence that there were people with this mindset, because that they were running camps or working in high position in camps that were less extreme than Auschwitz, that they should get thanks for not being the most deadly and most horrific camp of them all. And obviously nobody was going to thank them. Nobody in their right minds, nobody sane, nobody in this whole planet would thank them for exterminating hundreds of thousands just because other camps exterminated more than them. But in their minds, it made sense. In whatever way, I cannot fathom it. In my sane mind, it doesn't make any sense. But in their minds back then, and it was a true occurrence in post-war Germany, that in their minds it made sense. And Dukat, he is that kind of person who was thinking that other Cardassian commanders, they killed 2 as many Bajorans as me. So if another Cardassian commander killed 2 million Bajorans and Dukat killed 1 million Bajorans, he said, well, the other guy killed 2 as many as me. You should be thanking me for being so merciful and so nice to you. And the character genuinely believed that. And that is the basis of his whole character, that he believes people should be thanking him for, even though he was a genocidal maniac, he was only half the genocidal maniac that other genocidal maniacs were. And this has a connection to true stories in the real world, in this world that we live in our history. This has a real connection to real people, and it is represented in Dukat. And this mindset really exists, that even though Dukat was a genocidal maniac towards the Bajorans, he expected them to thank him for the fact that other Cardassian occupiers were so much more brutal than he was. He was still extremely brutal, but others were so much more brutal. He prided himself in being the least brutal. He only killed 1 million, while others killed 2 million or 10 million. And I, Dukat, only killed 1 million. I am such a merciful, benevolent, nice guy. And that is the character of Dukat, and it shines through the series that he is so convinced of that story that because he was the least brutal of brutal genocidal maniacs, the least brutal and genocidal of brutal genocidal maniacs, Bajorans should thank him. That was his idea. And I admire Mark Alamo for playing it so convincingly throughout 7 seasons of DS9. He did it so well. It was so amazing. And he always transported that idea that Bajorans, that they should fall on their knees and kiss his feet for being the least brutal genocidal maniac compared to other brutal genocidal maniacs, even though he was a brutal genocidal maniac. It was amazing because it corresponds to real world people. It was truly amazing. And if there is the debate on whether Dukat was good or evil, obviously he was evil. He was a genocidal maniac. But his idea was that because he was the least genocidal maniac among other genocidal maniacs, that made him good. He was a good guy because other guys killed 10 million and he only killed 1 million. So I only killed 1 million Bajorans. I'm the good guy. Other guys killed 10 million Bajorans. And it never occurred to him the idea that he still killed 1 million. That still makes him evil. That never occurred to him. In his mind, it meant that he killed the least, he was the least brutal. That means he's the good guy. Everyone should thank him for being the good guy. He was the least brutal, he only killed 1 million. That's basically the story of his character. And of course, that makes him ultimate evil still, but in his mind, it makes him good. But it also doesn't make him less evil than others, because it doesn't depend on the numbers. If you kill 1 million or 10 million, you still kill millions. You're still ultimate evil if you commit genocide. Genocide is genocide, and evil is evil because genocide is evil. It's that simple. So there isn't any more or less comparison. He's just an evil genocidal maniac, obviously. But what made his character work so well is that he convinced himself that he was the good guy of the occupation. And that gave so much drama and so much interesting stories, and really made him the most interesting antagonist. Because he was pure evil, and everyone smart knew it from the first episode. Since the pilot, since Emissary, we all know he was ultimate evil, but the way he sold it, he spent 7 seasons trying to convince everyone he was the good guy, and he had the charisma to temporarily convince people. That's what made the drama between main characters and him, that he had the charisma to temporarily convince that he's actually not a bad guy. And that's really what made him work. That even though he was ultimate evil, he had the charisma based on his own conviction that he was the good guy, that made main characters feel temporarily sympathetic towards him. And that really created a one-of-a-kind conflict between protagonists and antagonists that Star Trek never had before and never had again since. That's really the reason why he's probably one of the all-time top 5 characters, just by sheer quality of character in Star Trek history.